Linnea's story is both a very, very personal perspective into her life and her experiences, but it's also a front row view into an amazing period of progress in the treatment of lung cancer. You know, the larger goals of the healthcare industry can be wrapped up and expressed through the lives and the experiences of an individual.
In the spring of 2001, I began to feel unwell. I was very active physically just prior to my diagnosis. I ate well. I had never smoked. Lung cancer did not seem like something I needed to worry about. I had this sensation of falling as if I were on a plane that was going down. I was 48 years old. It was 2 weeks prior to my daughter's marriage. My youngest was 11. He still couldn't even say the word cancer. I had 3 kids. I needed to live. I needed to see some sort of counselor. And when I went in, my first words were, "You need to help me learn how to die." My doctor had some news for me. The biopsy for restaging had come back positive for a newly identified driver in lung cancer, an ALK mutation. You can choose to enroll in this phase 1 clinical trial. My biggest fear was that by saying yes, I might actually hasten my death.
Linnea had a really, truly spectacular response. And I very clearly remember how amazing the results were because we could already see a very dramatic reduction in her lung cancer.
I just burst into tears. I couldn't believe it.
She only came to Mass General and the clinical trials that saved her life through this Rube Goldberg-like set of coincidences. A friend's husband knew a surgeon at Mass General, and that's literally how she came to find care.
As remarkable as this looked, it did not represent cure. At some point in time, my cancer would become resistant. I refer to my participation in clinical trials as both my privilege and my burden. Although I know I would not be alive without clinical trials, there is also an incredible toll for participation. There are expenses like meals, transportation, housing if you need to spend the night someplace, parking. None of this is covered by the trial. I have now had over 100 spiral CAT scans of my chest, 61 CAT scans of my abdomen, 42 brain MRIs. At a certain point in time, I just had to say enough, no more. This was a risky move. I could have been kicked out of the trial for noncompliance. And yet my oncologist backed me up on this, that the scanning schedule was changed, and it was changed for all participants, which had been part of my original ask. So that felt good.
To hear a patient's concerns, to navigate as a physician, how to balance the patient's concerns with the sound scientific execution of a clinical trial, and then to get a sponsor to change that trial, I think that's really what being patient-centric is all about when you do a clinical trial. There's a broader lens, which is to not just react to a patient's concerns, but to involve patients in the beginning, earlier in the process, to have them really have a seat at the table.
Patients have become really empowered, and a lot of that has been through social media. To have a community that they can turn to in terms of support, in terms of questions, in terms of guidance. These communities also are very powerful in terms of helping to potentially steer research.
Along this journey, I have also transitioned from what I would call an advocate to an activist for lung cancer. and particularly clinical trials. A big part of what I am pushing to change in clinical trials is the way that patients are regarded. Just as Alice and I are a team, and we have this incredible partnership, I would like to see that become a reality in clinical trials.
Patients are essential. We can't do any of this work. We can't develop new drugs without patients. So I view it really as a very, very critical partnership, and that means we have to take into account what the patient's wishes and needs are.
At the heart of healthcare are those magical moments between a patient and their doctor. And then from that, everything else in healthcare flows. We have in healthcare these very complicated financial systems. We have incredibly complicated workflows. And yet, at the end of the day, what we seek to do is to improve the lives of people like Linnea, to decrease suffering from human disease.
For many of us, this is our best hope. This is care. It's not an experiment. And I feel it's important to always keep this human perspective in mind.